Alright, Chapter 10, Operation Maintenance of a Diesel Electric Locomotive Field Manual TM, or Technical Manual 55203, or 202. I'm not sure, I didn't want to flip like 110 pages. Chapter Main Power System, Section 1, Power Transmission Set, of System 66 Main Power Circuit. The main power circuits are those of the current of the heavy, the current of the high voltage from the main generator, the traction motor, having the duty power for the switch, reverser, field shutting, the tract with related equipment. If the locomotive has no AC power system, not motor driven, and even the cooling fans when used when operated the main power circuit. The circuit is remotely controlled by the apparatus control circuit of the power. The wire diagrams relatively easily traced. More difficult series are used. Figure 49 shows the basic series of the series personnel, series parallel shunt motor, the connection of the four more transition type of locomotive. Each motor is a circuit of the independent others except for the use of the small wires and wheel slip relay circuit of the motor connection. The typical locomotives are permanently connected with the series of locomotive parallel. The contactors are used and tied between the motor circuits that exist for the unused portion of the motor circuit of the serial will pour parallels while in the motor series and connections. A contactor closing with the type of the tie in the circuit is used and used the other contactors open the circuit of from the generator so that the full generator voltage is applied to any one of the motor circuits is applied to the motors in a series. The main power circuits operated the voltage ranging from 600 to 1200 volts. The more the generator, motor, electronic equipment cabinets are the chief points. The possible exposures personnel should keep clear of the reverser and contactor generator motors and cables when the locomotive is underloaded, and adequate safety precaution must be observed. 67. The main generator converts the power out of the diesel engine into an electrical power for the operation traction motor that furnishes the direct current at a varying voltage up to 1200 volts, and it's mounted on the driven of the diesel engine of the speed. Therefore, the varies the engine of the speed between approximately 350 to 1800 RPMs. Self-ventilated for the fuel mounted on the shaft. The generator field is especially designed to meet the requirements, particularly for the diesel locomotive. The main field is supplied with the battery resistor, which is under the control of the load regulator with the different field wound inching that oppose the main field. The series with the generator output, the strength of the opposing field varies. Generator output, the purpose of the vary the total the field strength. The constant kilowatt output, the outbound obtained by the other fields, such as the starting field, they're using when cranking the communication field, which would improve the performance of the main pole. The pieces among the laminated steel carefully riveted together with the help of the frame tab bolts and studded through the frame. The field coils are impregnated back into the insulation compound of the guard against the movement of the shafting of the coils to permit the free of the flow from the internal development headed to the surface of the armature to build with the standing of the high speed of all vibrations lateral torsional, including operation with a diesel engine dynamical base, both before and the winding of the reducing the vibration supported by the anti-friction bearing of the other end of the engine. The crankshaft typical construction provides the adequate ventilation without allowing the pockets of the accumulation of the dirt or the moisture. 68. Traction motor. The traction motor converts electrical energy into the mechanical energy. Here's the traction motor with an exciter and auxiliary generator and through the armatures as the main generator. The the energy of the wheels of the traction effort of the series mounted directly with the current motors. The motors are mounted with the locomotive tracks or the grease of the locomotive axles. About half geared with the locomotive axles are half of the weight of the motor is supported on the truck frame for the nose of the motor frame and the other frame supported by the bearings of the axle. This must be connected electrically and permanently in the series panels, collecting connection for the range of transmission series, the series personnel connection of the armature, the turns on the rolling bearings and motor housing, axle bearing and split sleeve, the torque of the waste of the back of the oil lubrication, torque reaction of the greater load of that due to the weight of the motor and lubrication of the bearing of the difficult problem of somewhat similar packing lubrication of the journal boxes. 69. Traction motor or blower. The blowers are provided with a large locomotive force of the large quantity of cooling air of the traction motor. This force is ventilation of the motive and is necessary to prevent the overheating of the locomotive. Does not haul a train unless the traction motor is adequately cooled. The heated generator and the heavy currents will damage the motor is not carried away. Blowers are mounted with the floor of the locomotive ducts and through the underframe of the motors on AOLC MRS models. Rear blower is attached directly to the power takeoff of the gear of the unit. This shows a blower with 1, the communicator, 2, the lubricating fitting, 3, the cable bushing, 4, the cable clamp, 5, the traction motor leads, 6, the axle bearing, 6, the axle bearing, which is hard to see because I only see like, alright, 6 is the axle bearing, oil hole cover, 7, oil hole cover, 8, inspection cover and plate, 9 hinge pin, 10 communicator inspection cover button, cover bottom, 11 communicator inspection cover top, 12 communicator end frame head. The main generator blower is the mechanically driven for the engine, electrically driven the protection against the failure electrical power provided with the relay. Mechanical driven blowers should be inspected periodically when the guard of the against the failure. The 70 the exciter. The exciter is mounted with the gearbox of the main generator. The given is driven to the shaft exceeding the inside of the gearbox, supplying the main generator the field current of the same. Specifically wounded the generator maintains the power of the outlet and constant and impossible to avoid overloading the engine. The strength of the main generator field must be varied from the generator voltage increase the current, the demand, and increase its own field is supplied with several sets of windings which are independent each of their own order and desired of the characteristics. One set of windings of the 4-pole field with the energized battery. The auxiliary generator strength is determined by the load generator, which is installed with the circuit. Another set of the windings is 2-pole, which is fed with the exciter armature. The third set of the windings in differential reverse the field. The energizer current with the main generator. The current of the main generator, the traction motor is high differential field, opposing the other exciter fields. With thereby reducing the exciter output of the main generator field to maintain the generator output, which approximately engine power capacity through the speed range of the engine. 71. Load regulator. The control of the power of the output of the main generator at the engine speed or not to fall below that called by the throttle setting and the known as the load contactor or load control. The load is imposed on the engine and the governor amidst the fuel of the until the fuel limit of the speed is reached. At any type of increase of the load beyond this point will cause the engine to slow down in such a time. The load regulator of the generator, the excitation circuit that automatically reduces the power output of the generator, reducing the field excitation. The diesel engine continues into running normal speed. The load regulator automatically operated the rheostatic control with the pilot valve with electrical hydraulic governors and pneumatic hydraulic governors. The engine oil, the pressure to use the rheostat is directed by the pilot valve loading of the engine according to the throttle setting of the cab. According to the throttle setting in the cab, the only external wiring connections are 2 leads of the generator battlefield of this circuit of the load regulator to the 2 components of the pilot valve and the selected contained unit consisting of the hydraulic vane type motor attached to the communicator type of the rheostat. B. For the purpose of the load regulation, the engine horsepower output is determined by the rate of the fuel consumption. Thus, for each of the thrust pedal position is shown on the governor, there is defined fuel consumption indicated by the position of the governor power of the piston into the controls governing the injection racks. If the load of the engine should be such that more of the fuel consequently power is demanded with the predetermined balance point between the load of the consumption, the load regulator automatically reduces the engine load and reducing the battery field and switching and reducing the fuel consumption corresponding to the power output of the engine requires less than the predetermined setting of the load regulator, increasing the load engine and increasing the battery field excitation of the main generator in manner that the battery temperature changes the general windings and locomotive speed and may cause the overloading, unloading the engine. Constant power output is maintained for each of the throttle setting. 72. The main power switch is the power contactor illustrated, which connects the traction motor to maintain the generator, are pneumatically operated. This shows an auxiliary generator motor going onto a circuit one circuit to the battery, where the battery circuit also supplies the load regulator and the exciter at the 4 field. This shows the auxiliary generator with an exciter and 2 running one path accelerator through resistor, then skipping. And then the resistor field differential field goes around, skips to the main, goes around to the main generator field and back to the exciter field and the exciter 2-pole field. Now, the open field, the generator communicator field also returns to the main goes into another main generator, which hits the main generator, follows the line of the generator communication field, which ran through the resistor, the exciter field, and the traction motors. Heavy-duty single-pole switches rated to be approximately 12 volts to the 800 amperes. They are located in high-voltage electrical equipment cabinet. The contactor called the unit switch of the pneumatic power switch consists of one fixed movable contact with magnet movement as arcing horn, arcing box, and blowout coil. The magnet valve of the energized low-voltage circuit control circuit within the throttle advance to the first notch. They usually accomplish through the intermediate control contactor to the obtaining of the power to the interlocking, avoiding the cumbersome wiring of the throttle, which is never necessary. All related equipment that connected directly energize the magnet valve that admits the air to the cylinder, thereby moving the piston linkage into the close of the contact. Acts the spring action of the piston linkage open to the power contact. The control of the circuit no longer energizes the magnet valve, even though the circuit are designed so the contactors normally open to the traction motor that has been dropped. The negligible quantity provision must be made. Interruption heavy current of the contactors and occasionally upon the underloaded during the emergency braking application Standard construction in such conditions consist of an arcing horn to carry out the current of avoiding the pitting of the main contacting tips, arcing to define the arcing, preventing the burning of other parts of the contactor, blowing out of the coil of the magnetic field, the coil, the force that blows, the arcs that flows to the tip, the path of the arc increases the length, the difficult jumping in the gap, and increasing to jumping in the gap of the ruptured current, the currently seeks the flow. The contactor is also used to establish various connections of the traction motors between each of the other transition additional connections with the main generator, the core, and the magnet valve of the connector, and the transition circuits must be circuited in the transition controls which determine the contractor to open and close. When the transition controls are series and position of the power connectors in series, the motor of the connection is energized and closed, but the transition controls in series. Parallel positions only on power contactors and the serial parallel motor connections and re-energized. 73. The reverser is an electropneumatic switching device that reverses the connection of the traction motor field with the winding of the traction motor change with the direction of the rotation of the fields are reversed, thereby charging the direction of the travel of the locomotive, rotating the cylinder drum, maintaining the switch of electric maintaining the switching element of the reverse copper segment to the surface of the drum and the range of the contact is made of different combinations. Sliding the fingers as the drum rotates, a small angle in the controlled reverse level of the control standing in the cab. The lever is the forward of the reverse position. The corresponding magnet of the reverse energizes is applied with the pneumatic operating mechanism, air engine, and the turn of the drum establishes the power electrical connection. The actual turning may occur only after the controls are depending on the individual design. If the coil of the magnet valve is to burn out, then the reverser may be thrown the pressing button and pin in the magnet valve of the shift shaft. The shaft may also be turned manually if and the air supply fails. They apply the leverage to handle the base of the drum. The neutral position is seldom desired, but the available sometimes reverse of the engine is dead. The drum can be turned by hand. Some cams are mounted on the drum to operate interlocking the control circuit of the magnet valves on the reverser are fed to the interlocks on the main power switches related to the equipment, so the reverser will not turn except for the power circuits are open. The reverse does not break any of the current, therefore should be now burning pitting of the main contacts. 74. The traction motor field shunt equipment. The traction motor fields are provided with the shunt and derived portion of the field contact from the full power. This is the power switch. It's basically shows the arcing horn and the arcing chute and the blowout coil. Valve underneath with a magnetic end of the coil, which goes into the air line and the air cylinders, and the stationary contactor fingers to the contact block assembly, which goes up through a push rod, the flexible with a flexible connector and the terminal bars bearing the pins and movable contact arm, and to the laminated insulated supported bars. Here's a reverser. It's starting with an insulated shaft and an insulated finger support, with moving contact segments, finger adjustments, stationary contacting fingers, air engine, magnet valve, valve pin, and magnet valve. Okay, that's actually the turn the train, the reverser on the train controls. Output of the diesel engine cannot be absorbed in the motor. The full field, the strength of the field shutting into place during certain steps of the manual transmission and automatic transmission locomotives, which do not change the motor connection except for the shunting of the manufacturing using the field contactor, which pneumatically operated with the magnet valve. The other operated electrical relay operation of one of the easiest to understand relays. The set of the open and closed certain generator voltage, which are related to reach at certain locomotive speeds because of the definite relationship to speed voltage relays the closer the field shunting contact that permitted some of the current flow of the shunters at the time of the weakening of the foils the equivalent to the valve visual operation speed of the manner that are certain to the proper at the time of the manual and the field transition plus the manual shifting of the transition lever to close the field shunting contactor within the fields are shunted. A current increase of about 200 amperes to clear, indicating the load meter. The motor is the motors are absorbing the grade of the diesel engine power output. The contactor electromagnetic operated similar to those described in paragraph 63. As a disassembling shunting contactor, the care must be taken to never drop the piston head of the cylinder. Therefore, it's requiring accurate tolerances and a merry run machine surface. 75. The load ammeter. Load ammeter connected with the main power circuit of the mounted with the near control standing with the operating readily observed and frequently connected with the one circuit in which cases other motor circuits are carrying an equal amount of the current of the main generator. The current is the same all currents of the motor contacts currents, and some ammeters may be divided in color so indicated short rating of the overloading operation. Additional in figures showing the current of the amperes, the marked in the minutes in the overloading portion in which the scale indicates the maximum time of the locomotives may be operated into the load. The heavy current of the load speed decrease of the speed increase the greater the current, the greater the heating of the corresponding to short time limited to the allowable before reducing the load of the continuous rating in the white zone. If in the colored bands the use of the dial may be also indicated the series only control setting of the transition type of the locomotives and an instruction plate of the ammeter given the direction for the use of the short time ratings. Note the ammeter in the circuit which is open to the traction motor cutout switch. It will not be indicated any current button, the power transition and overloading limitations must be observed. 76. Load limits. Continuous rating and a diesel electric locomotive and overload is without stalling the engine. Therefore, it is necessary to provide the operator with the limited controls. Limitations cannot be specified to direct all conditions. Loading of the machine is left to the judgment to the operator, which should thoroughly be understood. The nature of the limitation of the great damage is likely to come from the overheating of the traction motor. The continuous rating of the motor is the load of which is the better generated for the by the current of the flowing of the motors is equal to the rate at which the heat is dissipated with the temperature remaining constant. The motor starts cold. It takes more than 1 hour the operation if the continuous rate of reaching constant temperature. Motor must be carefully designed to be able to temperature without melting solder. And loosening connections, roasting insulation so that it becomes brittle and fails, and insulate the consistent temperature is also approximately make sure the safe temperature. Higher temperature makes a motor failure that either immediately in normal surfaces the comparative short terms after the beginning damage. The continuous rating described in the ammeter as described in paragraph 75 is determined by those heating factors. It shows the temperature range and the low speed from the amperes. The temperature range from 900 amps to the speed of 5 miles an hour to about 40 miles an hour to 600 amps. The temperature somewhere middle gauge without overheating at 900 amps is 5 miles an hour. Overload. It's an ammeter indication greater than the continuous rating of the continuous overload. The electrical apparatus safely carry the overload. Limitation of the maximum allowable temperature has not been reached. Therefore, many times of the desirable safety to use the overload capacity of the locomotive. The greater the load, sooner the limit the reach. Load also under the conditions are called short time ratings. A 1 hour 1 hour rating means the starting cold continuous temperature which reads in 1 hour. The 30 minutes rating. The permissible of 30 minutes and 10 minutes rating would have been 10 minutes used in similar circumstances. Dial ammeter may be marked in like a manner, for example, 20% greater than the current, than for about 20% less than the required to reach the maximum temperature continuous rate of the 40% greater than the 40% less time overload with begins with the party upon partially warm should not be imposed at a long time or starting cold. Any motor which has been operating continuous rating for a long time does not have an overload capacity. Its operating remains in two different overload ratings. The operator can estimate the intermediate but the permissible time load change that the operator is gained confronted with the situation which locomotive with the exercise. For example, the train accelerates for the cold start of the locomotive ammeter with the 10-minute short time rating, but in the 10 minutes has reached the speed where in the working of the 30-minute short time rating that even though the ammeter should be dangerous and safe for the continuing load for the 30 minutes, assuming the locomotive is upgraded and whether it works in 20 minutes, a short time rating at half of the allowable overload. heat accumulation has been consumed for the first 10 minutes. The acceleration remains the 10 minutes period with the locomotive climb at the hill with a 20-minute short time rating. The train's routinely rating railroad may be used in the locomotive by successful negotiable rolling grade or the part of the locomotive is power is lost or and out of the out. Load limits of the judgment bases assuming the greatest efficiency for the remaining of the power of the army. The personnel finding it necessary to operate the strange territory load limits must be promptly ascertained, and any available records established by the railway personnel through the lead understand the various factors involved. 77. The transition of the acts of the changing the traction mode for the series connection, the series parallel connection, closing the field, the shunting circuits to weaken the traction motive if possible for the change of the flow of the circuit to obtain the more effective use of the power of the field shunt is relatively simple and can be done in two or the more stages desired with the automatic shutting. The relays usually control the challenge of transition mode of the connection frequently does they automatically thought and operated transition controls are and use transition occurs when the proper circuit valves prevail on either and decreasing locomotive speeds and normally called the backward transition original connection are made the opposite sequence and speed decreases when the motors are connected in a series. The same current that flows to each of the motor. The generator voltage is impressed on the entire of the group of the motors resulting in the comparative local voltage from each of the motor. The connections are changed input in motors in the series parallel each other. High voltage impressed on each of the more. The resulting corresponding increase in the current of each motor then correspondingly increase the power output of the generator. The field shunt of the series motor, the shunted only the portion current that continues the through flow for the fields. The weakening of the field the and current voltage and back EMF. This equivalent to lower the resistance of the circuit of the result and increase the flow of the circuit the increase of the current in every instance of the torque of the tractive effort of the more power drawn from the generator and balanced condition of the voltage current of the tractive effort is reached from the progressive higher speeds. 78. Dynamic braking. Locomotives are often provided with additional electrical equipment through which an energy of the train moving drawn converted into electrical energy was dissipated by the heat of the special resistors. The special heat of the train is kept down and the force required for the generated electricity. The feature is known as dynamic braking. It is used the particular load on the grade, reducing the wear on the brakes and always used them throughout the train to prevent the excessive heating of the wheels and eliminates the operating of the stop of the for cooling the wheels. The traction motors such as the generator driven in the axles during the dynamic braking. The marking connections are changed during the braking. The amount of the braking is regulated, changing the field excitation from the motors, and the controls are built into the throttle for the reverse lever. This system is independent air braking system, which may also used simultaneously on all other train. Air brakes are automatically interlocked out of the action of the locomotive to prevent the sliding of the wheels. The dynamic braking necessary bunches of the train. Their four slacks should always be adjusted. The gradually controls are simple and detailed instruction for each of the models, and it should be obtained from the appropriate instruction manual. The technical graduate release application of the brakes simpler than the air brakes, but the technique of the handling of long trains in conjunction with the air brakes should be carefully studied. The visual relay and contactors are inspected, maintained in the same manner as the other relays. The contactor maintenance and adjustment of any of the installation of the locomotive must follow the individual testing instruction in the sequence relay, and the pickup of the loading and the operating instruction must be obtained to each of the locomotive. But a brief summary of the typical operation of the given operation section. The U.S. Army owned diesel electric locomotives are not equipped with dynamic braking. U.S. Army owned diesel electric locomotives are not equipped with dynamic braking. Section 2. Power control circuits.